All right, recording has started. Harriet, she whispered, her voice trembling. We need to go. Now. The temperature had immediately dropped around them. Seraphim had heard of this before. Her father had told her bedtime stories of the air crystallization and becoming sharp when she was warm in his embrace. But she had never experienced it before. There was a cascade of sunlight falling through the canopy of the trees, and it had been warm mere seconds before. And now she could see her breath. The sharp air hurt her lungs as she drew a ragged breath. Harriet's body began to quiver and shake as she too sensed the shift in the air. But before they could move, a figure emerged from the shadows of the trees. It was unlike anything Seraphim had ever seen. A towering, 10 feet tall, hulking creature enshrouded in deep navy darkness. Its eyes roved the forest, looking for any movement. They glowed faintly, as orbs of eerie purple and blue light. The gaze seemed to pierce through her, seeping into her very soul. Seraphim ducked down and pulled Harriet with her. Spotting the entrance that they had just come out of, Seraphim counted the steps and her head back to it. 20 if they could keep pace and not trip over anything. She hugged her sister and hissed explicit instructions. Promise me, Ree, you won't look at it, Seraphim implored her, holding Harriet's face between her palms. Please, whatever you do, don't meet its eyes. Harriet nodded her head in agreement, and they settled for a second. The creature's hulking steps moved in the opposite direction, and Seraphim knew that now was the time to make a run for it. She pulled Harriet up, and they both lightly padded away as the creature was distracted with a kerfuffle, shifting through the underbrush. It squeaked to the others in the trees. Seraphim and Harriet were going to make it. The entrance was only 10 feet away. She sighed silently as she counted down the steps. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. As she was pulling Harriet as fast as she could, and they were almost to the clearing before the wall and the entrance ahead. Snap! Harriet's foot found a medium-sized branch with her foot. The sound echoed and the creature whirled around, and at once flew in their direction. They crossed the sun-filled clearing before the entrance. They were both running full tilt. The air raced past their ears, and the creature was suddenly in front of them. Seraphim closed her eyes and barreled forward. Harriet's arm locked with hers. Seraphim and Harriet raced with all their might to the open entrance. Harriet looked up as the creature roared again, and Seraphim was lurched to a halt as Harriet suddenly froze in place. Seraphim pulled as much as she could, and the force field zapped the creature as it tried to enter behind them. Seraphim sighed contentedly as she heard the crackle of the force field stop sizzling. She looked at her sister, her face contorted in terror and her eyes blank. All at once, Seraphim realized what had happened. Harriet was petrified. No! Harriet, you promised! Come back to me now, Seraphim shouted hysterically. She started to sob uncontrollably. Harriet! 10 months ago. Winding paths radiated from the base of the mother tree, their smooth cobblestones blending harmoniously with the verdant tapestry of the garden. These paths were meticulously maintained by the initiates, their dedication evident in every carefully tended flower bed and precisely pruned tree. Clad in the distinctive robes of their order, azure robes adorned with golden symbols of growth and enlightenment, the young arborists in training moved with a grace that belied their youth. Their every action was guided by the teachings imparted by the elders. instilling with them profound respect for the delicate balance of nature and the sanctity of their surroundings. One of the aspiring initiates moves with fluidity and grace. Her countenance shows concern and concentration across her brows. Her look is quickly alleviated. As a man approaches her who is likely double her physical age and a third taller than she is, his greeting is relaxed and it is clear they are familiar with one another. Her face has the bloom of youth, approaching adulthood. His is the rugged state of someone who has started to approach the middle of his life. The sunlight glints off of her fiery locks, pulled back in a simple high ponytail, as she engages in conversation with her apparent mentor, her aquamarine eyes shimmering with mirth. Her smile emphasizes their camaraderie and his relaxed pace as they walk together to the nearest entrance. The young lady pauses at the entrance and looks back at the path she has just traversed and thinks to herself about the grandeur of this auspicious day. Her mentor urges her through the entrance, and we hear her name. Seraphim, let's get going. After the door closes, a shadow flies over the door. It's only there momentarily, but the quiet chittering of birds is instantly silent, and it disappears as suddenly as it appears. Could something or someone be after her? The next day, Seraphim is engrossed in concentration on these paths. She felt the presence of centuries-old wisdom embedded in the very stones beneath her feet. The air hummed with a tranquil energy, suffused with the whispers of the past and the promise of future generations who would come to uphold the sacred legacy of Elysium. For the initiates, tending to the mother tree was considered the highest honor, a privilege granted only to those who have proven their worth through a series of tests, the gauntlet proving the initiates rigor. Each of the trials test not only their physical endurance, but also their mental fortitude and spiritual alignment with the garden's essence. Only the most dedicated and resilient among them are deemed worthy of becoming full-fledged arborists, entrusted with the care of the mother tree. Seraphim stops short. She hears faint whispering. She looks around to locate where it might be coming from. She races on ahead to her training space. She immediately thinks about the training and trials she will face. Legendary in scope, the trials had been spoken of in hushed tones by those who have endured them and those who aspire to. They included navigating the labyrinthine roots of the mother tree, deciphering the ancient glyphs that reveal the secrets of the garden, and enduring the harrowing night of whispers, a solitary vigil under the stars, where initiates confront their deepest fears and doubts. Those who emerge victorious from these trials are transformed, their spirits tempered by the crucible of their ordeals. Once they have earned their place among the celestial arborists, these dedicated guardians would devote their lives to the mother tree. They oversee the health of her roots, ensure the balance of the garden's diverse flora, and protect the sacred fruits that grant various abilities and visions to the people of Elysium. Their bond with the mother tree is profound, a symbiotic relationship that sustains both the tree and the society that depends on it. The next day, as the town square is just becoming reawakened, Seraphim on approach with the divine paths. Footpaths allow her to meditate on her steps, to which she is going to best her mentor Leon with. She practices a move over and over, repeat with fluidity and concentration. His stern lectures the previous day had caused her frustration, as she couldn't get the momentum she had needed. She looked around at her surroundings and was mindful of her feet as she felt the presence of centuries-old wisdom embedded in the very stones beneath her. A tiny creature hopped onto the path. It had eyes like wide saucers and large rounded ears. To anyone else, it would have been a harbinger of great joy and excitement. To Seraphim, it suddenly made her palms sweat and her breath quicken. But the air hummed with a tranquil energy, infused with the whispers of the past and the promise of future generations who would come to uphold the sacred legacy of Elysium. The pinks and purples of the early dawn were giving over to the brighter golds and silvers in the sky to the east. The gigantic canopy of the mother tree dispersing the light, and it was still a twilight feel. Eventually, as she continued to move forward, the golden hues of sunrise broke through the lower branches over the Elysium garden. Seraphim's terror caused her to jump over the tiny critter, and she was full trot as she caught up with the rest of the class of hopeful arborists. She let out a deep sigh to quell her racing heart. She felt her elation override the terror she had just experienced from the tiny critter known as a kerfuffle. She was ready to take her mentor down a peg. The anticipation for the upcoming Luminalis festival added a palpable excitement to the air, but the trial still loomed in the distance, a reminder of the hard work yet to come. Her classmates were stretching their arms and legs and jogging in place. Directly on the left of Seraphim was Ariana, a neighbor whom she had grown up with. The two of them had been constant friends from the time she was 3 years old. She also spotted her sister's fiancé and several other people from her neighborhood. Since she had started training for the trials, Seraphim had become solitary in her endeavors to be able to concentrate as well as she was able. As she looked around the class who were also training then she spotted her mentor and waved. His smile was more a smirk, and she knew he was planning a good session for her again. Leon stood at the edge of the training field, his arms crossed as he observed the students. His imposing figure, a mix of muscle and authority, was enough to command attention from even the most distracted trainees. He called out instructions with a firm but encouraging tone, ensuring each student pushed themselves to their limits. Form 16, Leon called to the future arborists as they moved into formation to spar. Seraphim had her hair tied back in a high ponytail. Tied back her hair in a high ponytail, stood across from her sparring partner Leander. He made a goofy grin that would have made everyone else forget he was a skilled fighter. Seraphim made a similar show to let him know that she didn't have her guard down. Leander was known for his quick reflexes and strategic mind. The two circled each other, eyes locked on, searching for an opening. Remember, focus on your balance and controlled breathing is key, Leon called out, his eyes keenly watching all of their movements. Technique over strength. Leander lunged forward with a swift strike aimed at Seraphim's midsection. She sidestepped gracefully, her training kicking in as she deflected his blow with her forearm. Her arm guard deflecting but not removing the pain of the blow. She winced but lunged back at him in a stabbing motion and was able to connect with his clavicle and right shoulder. She could feel him stumble backwards, and it was enough for her to place another blow at his back leg. He got back up, goofy grin now replaced with agitation. Leander and Seraphim had been consistent sparring partners. Usually he had bested her by this point in their matches. She hadn't normally been able to block or strike as easily as she had this morning. Her breathing was deep and constant, and was keeping time with the sound of the other wooden practice staves clashing and echoing through the field. The other teams of sparring trainees would lunge and strike, gladiatorial in nature. Seraphim's breath allowed her to assess Leander's next movements, and she countered with a series of quick jabs, testing Leander's defenses. He parried each one, his movements fluid and precise. They danced around each other, their steps a careful choreography of attack and defense. As they sparred, Seraphim couldn't help but think about the Luminalis festival. It was later that day, and the thought of celebrating new life and growth in the garden brought a smile to her face. Leander saw an opening and swung his staff in a wide arc. Seraphim ducked, feeling the rush of air as the blade passed over her head. She rolled to the side, ducking to the ground and then springing back to her feet with a determined glint in her eye. "Good work, Seraphim!" Leon shouted, nodding in approval. "Stay on your toes!" She smiled appreciatively at Leon. She let her guard down in that moment. Leon's praise didn't happen often in her direction. Leander saw his immediate advantage, launching a series of rapid strikes. Seraphim's guard was back up and her heart was racing as she blocked and dodged, her body moving on instinct. Leander fell back and his hand hit with one of her strikes. As he retreated, she saw her chance and took it, sweeping Leander's legs out from under him with a low kick. He fell to the ground with a full grunt, his staff clattering beside him. Seraphim pointed her staff at his chest, breathing heavily but smiling triumphantly. "Well done," Leander said, a wry smile on his face as he accepted her help to stand up. Leon approached both of them, clapping a hand on each other's shoulders. "Excellent work, both of you. Remember, the key is not just in defeating your opponent, but in learning from each encounter. The trials may be 11 months away, but every moment counts." Seraphim nodded, glancing at Leander, who returned her smile. The camaraderie among the trainees was strong, despite the competitive nature of their training. They all knew the importance of their roles in the garden and the weight of the legacy they were expected to uphold. As the session came to an end, the trainees gathered their things and began to disperse. Leon called out to them, "Enjoy the festival, but don't lose sight of your goals. To Luminalis, as Celestials hold." "As Celestials hold!" all the trainees intoned. Seraphim walked with Leander towards the path leading into the town, the excitement of the upcoming festival mingling with the satisfaction of a good training session. "You fought well today," she said, nudging him playfully. "You too," Leander replied, grinning. "But don't think I'll go easy on you next time." They laughed, the tension of the sparring match dissipating as they talked about their plans for Luminalis. "So, Sarah, what are you excited to eat tonight for opening ceremonies?" Leander asked. Seraphim's eyes twinkled as she thought about the firebirds and lanterns that mark the start of the festival. "Leander, I am sure you can hazard a guess as to what I'm looking forward to." The kerfluffle dancers, the fish wreaths, the somersaulting lion? Leander teases, "You know my favorite part is the firebirds and their flock floating over the mother tree." As they strolled down the path leading into town, the golden light of the rising sun bathed the surroundings in a warm glow. The scent of blooming flowers mingled with the faint aroma of breakfast meals being prepared, creating a comforting atmosphere that wrapped around them like a blanket. "Are you excited for the Luminalis festival?" Seraphim asked, glancing at Leander. "Absolutely," he replied, his eyes lighting up. "It's one of my favorite times of the year. The whole community comes together, and there's just this incredible energy in the air. Plus, the food is amazing." Seraphim chuckled. "You are always thinking with your stomach." Hey, can you blame me? Leander shot back with a playful old smirk. But seriously, it's more than just the food. It's the traditions, the celebrations, the way everyone comes together to welcome new life and honor those who have come of age. Yeah, Seraphim agreed, her thoughts drifting to her own coming of age ceremony next year. It's a special time. This year feels different, though. How so? Is it because Harriet is participating this year? Leander asked, his curiosity piqued. Seraphim hesitated. I guess there's just a lot on my mind. The future feels more uncertain than ever. Leander nodded, understanding the weight of her words. I get that. With the trials coming up and everything else, it's a lot to think about. But you know, Seraphim, whatever happens, you've got us. Your friends, your family. We'll face it all together. Ariana whizzes by in that moment on a scooter shouting, Leander, does it hurt where Sarah made you kiss the ground? That was quite a move, girl. Thanks, Ari. Seraphim shouted back, turning back to face Leander. She smiles at him, grateful for his reassurance. Thanks, Leander. That means a lot. As they approached the town square, the preparations for the Luminalis festival were already in full swing. Banners were hung, stalls were set up, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Children ran around, their laughter echoing through the streets, while adults busied themselves adding final touches to the decorations. Looks like it's going to be quite the celebration, Leander remarked, taking in the festive scene. Seraphim nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. They continued to walk, chatting about their favorite Luminalis memories and speculating on what this year's festival would bring. As they neared the center of town, they spotted Leon speaking with a group of elders, likely discussing the final security arrangements for the event. Looks like Dad is busy, Leander said, nodding towards their mentor. Yeah, he always takes on so much responsibility, Seraphim observed, admiring Leon's dedication. Well, we should probably head home and get some rest, Leander suggested. Big night tonight. You're right, Seraphim agreed, though her mind was still racing with thoughts of the festival and future. See you later, Leander. Have a good rest, Seraphim, he replied, giving her a friendly wave before heading off in the direction of his home. As she prepared for a nap before the evening's festivities, her thoughts wandered to the trials and her path as an arborist. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but with the Luminalis festival starting tonight, she was reminded of the importance of community, tradition, and the unbreakable bonds that held them all together. She lay down on her bed and cuddled Harriet close to her. Looking at her little sister, she was grateful for the family she had, and the family she made, and for now, that was enough. 2 hours later, Seraphim jumped, startled as she turned off the alarm she had set to encourage her to wake up. She nudged Harriet. Get up, sleepyhead. We have to get ready. Harriet groans and pulls the covers over her head in protest. 5 more minutes, Sarah. I was in the middle of the best dream. I was kissing Setheron under the firebirds. Riri, we don't want to miss the flock, do we? Seraphim's pleasant tone and smile plays at her lips as she pulls back the blanket to see Harriet's face. Okay, I guess I can get up to see them for real. And maybe Setheron is going to be there already. Harriet jumps up and begins gathering their clothes for the evening. Dressing for the festival opening. The dresses that were laid out for them were of the oranges and reds of the festival banners. Seraphim's dress also had a deep V and cold shoulder arm detail, and an ombre effect from yellow to red on the skirt. Harriet's dress had a purple and teal ombre and slightly open back with a corset waist. It also had a deep emerald brocade on the full skirt, and emphasized her deep chestnut hair and her ocean green eyes. Seraphim and Harriet weren't brought up in opulence, but their mother knew that they should be dressed well for most festivals. She made sure that that they each had a frock that could be styled well with the colors of the festival and worn plainly as the occasion demanded. The colors of the Luminalis festival were perfectly accentuated with the colors of each dress. It was a simple shift that could have a beaded brocade or a sash added as a belt to bring out what the girls liked about the festival they would be celebrating. Harriet had taken an additional scarf and wrapped herself with it in the simple sheath. The scarf was a significant blue ombre with special patterns that had each played a part, enhancing the dress. Seraphim chose a delicate yellow scarf, lightly beaded to add a touch of life to her dress. After finishing their preparations, the girls admired one another in the mirror and giggled at their reflections. They clambered down the stairs out the front door and were immediately faced with the vibrant scent of the Luminalis festival. The town square is electric with lively energy of the festival. Stalls brimmed with colorful decorations, pennants swaying gently in the breeze, their vibrancy dancing in the evening sunshine, and tables adorned with intricate tapestries showcasing the artisan's skills. Garlands of roses and lilies and lilac hung from the eaves of the buildings about the square, their perfume mingling with the scent of freshly baked cinnamon pastries and roasting meats in butter and garlic. Vendors called out to the passer-by, extolling the virtues of their wares, from handcrafted jewelry that glinted in the sunlight to meticulously woven fabrics in every imaginable hue. Seraphim and Harriet make their way into that stall. The girls are set on finding new scarves. Harriet giggles regularly as Seraphim's face peeks through the curtains of multicolored fabrics. Seraphim's eyes catch on a dazzling blue and green brocade that shows 4 mother trees and winding roots. She takes it to the stall owner and makes her purchase. Harriet also finds a golden scarf that has tiny beads in the shape of one of the local species of lemurs that inhabit the mother tree. She also takes it to the stall owner and they step out admiring their new purchases. The girls immediately exchange their purchases with one another to accentuate their current outfits, and both tie the scarves around their shoulders to ward off the cool of the impending night. They look about the square and see several of their friends across the way. Seraphim waves to Leander, Ariana, and Setheron. Leander notices first and waves back, then nudges Setheron to wave to Harriet. They smile and approach each other. 4 or 5 children cut running through the group playing tag and honey scouts. Their laughter and shrieking adds to the clinking of coins and conversations, an occasional burst of laughter from other groups of friends. Musicians have set up at various corners of the square, tuning their instruments and rehearsing their songs. The sweet notes of a flute drifted through the air, accompanied by the rhythmic strumming of a lute and the deep resonant beat of a drum. Eventually people pause to listen. Some grab hands and start swaying gently to the music, their spirits lifted by the harmonious melodies. The music soon turns sprightly and the beat of the drum doubles in time, and at once people are swinging and dancing to the jig, clapping hands and tapping toes in a choreography that everyone immediately jumps into. The song moves the crowd along, and when eventually it ends, the participants clap their hands and the musicians take a bow. Outside the ring of skipping, lilting steps and bright, joyful bounding, the craftsmen demonstrated their skills, also drawing appreciative crowds. A blacksmith's hammer rings out as he shaped a glowing metal into ornate lanterns, each one destined to hold a candle that would illuminate the night. Nearby, a potter's wheel spun smoothly as skilled hands coaxed clay into elegant shapes, the finished pieces displayed proudly on wooden shelves. The chatter of townsfolk filled the air, conversations weaving together in a tapestry of communal life. Ariana approached Seraphim and Harriet, encircling each with a warm embrace. Harriet, I bet you and Setheron are going to be drifting together at any moment, aren't you now? Hop to it now. Ariana decidedly takes it upon herself to place them together first by looking into their eyes and then grabbing their hands. She hands Harriet to Setheron and pushes them into a sprightly shuffle. Looking at Leander, Seraph, and Seraphim, she winks and wipes her hands. My work is done. Seraphim and Ariana giggle as Setheron and Harriet meld into the group, both pink in embarrassment and mutual admiration. Ariana sighs. If only that were me and my true love. But Kieran has 2 left feet. I wish he didn't have to tend the wall. Leander glances between Ariana and Seraphim. He locks eyes with Sarah and then takes Ariana's hand. Come on, Ari, let's show them how to spin here. I know Kieran wanted to be out here too, but we can dance in his absence. Ariana steps back, but Seraphim's arms block her departure. Sarah gave an encouraging nod to Leander, and he pulled on Ariana's arm, and Seraphim pushed her off the step onto the square that the other dancers were occupying. Soon, Ariana and Leander were flying about with the rest of them. Whispering starts again, and Seraphim starts to look around her. Harriet and Setheron have gathered the rhythm of the dance, and Seraphim spots a dark figure down the slope from where her sister cautiously steps. Seraphim looks again, and it disappears. So she turns to her sister again. Harriet and Setheron gained their footing, and their administration of the steps became more precise. Ariana and Leander laughed and smiled at them both, and at Seraphim when they came about, as the dancers bobbed and wove like the tapestry behind Seraphim. Leon had taken a break and had grabbed Leander's youngest sister, Tovelin. She was a happy child of 3, spinning with Daddy in the merriment. He swooped her up and placed her on his shoulders. Her little ponytails bounced as she moved about with the beat of the music. She smiled broadly atop his shoulders. Seraphim saw an older couple, both octogenarians, moving to the music. A little slower and cautious, but you could see the brightest joy in them as they reminisced about Luminalis' past. Seraphim knew the couple as Leander's great-grandparents, Tyran and Sophia. They had been married under a Firebird ceremony 65 years earlier, so this was an especially joyful, festive old night for them both. As they stopped weaving and bobbing together, the older couple asked all the littlest members to come to them. Soon a swath of 15 to 30 children were making their way to them. Duran asked the musicians to take a break, and he looked lovingly at Sophia. Children, this is my true love, Sophia. She is kind and loving and brave, and her precious presence has always brought me great joy. We are celebrating our 65th year this year together, and I want you to each know what a joy it is to find love and keep it for a long lifetime. May you each find your own deep true love, and may you each have a long life and health. With that, the musicians started to play with the appreciation of the crowd as the older couple walked into the square holding hands. Seraphim went back to watching the dancing as Leander and Ariana came back to rest. Searching the throng of people, Sarah at once realized that Setheron and Harriet had disappeared. I will see you later. Riri is gone and I need to find her, Seraphim states to Leander and Ariana. Sarah, you want us to come with you? Ariana asks her with concern on her face. No, Ari. You know she and Setheron are probably just getting their fish faces on. She puckers her lips in mock kisses. Ariana and Leander almost fall over from laughing so hard. Okay, but if that's actually what's happening, please smack Sethron for me. That boy knows not to be outside of the festival perimeter. We don't want to fall in our company. Leander looks around nervously. Sephirim touches his arm. Said that one wrong. Touches his arm reassuringly. I will absolutely smack him regardless of if it's a kiss or not. She promises and then starts making her way through the crowd of dancers. As the dancers part, she catches glimpses of the colors that Harriet was wearing, but it's not enough teal and purple to be her. As she continued, she noticed an alleyway and darted down it and came out between two stalls. The alley suddenly feels cold, and Seraphim runs full tilt through. When she is on the other side, she spies Harriet, but as soon as she makes her way to her, Harriet is bound away with Sethron in tow. Harriet and Sethron darted and rove through the bustling square, both now engaged in a spirited game of tag. Harriet's laughter rang out as she sprinted between stalls, her agility allowing her to slip through narrow gaps. Sethron followed close behind, his determination clear despite the apparent obstacles. I've got you, Sethron called out triumphantly, reaching Harriet. But as he went to place a hand on her shoulder, she dodged just like when she was at training. She had anticipated his hand and ducked immediately out of the way. Not quite, she smiled and and a snicker issued from her lips, and she darted ahead of several more festival goers and pushed through a set of low-hanging pennants. Seraphim stood still at the edge of the square, once again sweeping the crowd with her gaze, her face awash with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. Harriet and she were being presented at the festival, and there wasn't much time to waste before the presentation. She scanned the crowd again and was finally rewarded, her sister's auburn hair bobbing through the throng and the tail of her scarf flying behind her, and Seraphim sighed to herself. That girl is going to give me gray hair. Sarah called out to Harriet, Ree, we need to get to the stage and get ready. Harriet, oblivious to the plaintive call, sprang away with a leap and a bound. Sethron also continued after her. Seraphim also hurried after her. Her quickened pace helped as she wove through the crowd with determination. Abruptly, she had the realization that if they kept going, she might be able to corner her and they would both be at center stage momentarily. But she wanted to walk with her and not with Sethron. Ree, slow down. Wait for me, E. Seraphim called out. Seraphim called out, trying to keep her voice steady and not shrieking at the top of her lungs. Sethron had finally reached Harriet and was pulling her into an embrace. Seraphim averted her eyes, not wanting to disturb them, as it was likely Harriet's true first kiss. Seraphim's pulse quickened, her breath catching in her throat as she desperately scanned the street. Harriet and Sethron were just ahead, their figures barely visible in the dimming light. Panic surged through her as they seemed to vanish into thin air. No, not right now. She raced towards where they had been, her heart pounding with each step. The alleyway loomed ahead, the same one Harriet had disappeared down earlier. Rumors of the fallen being captured had plagued her thoughts for weeks. Stories of rebels taken into the night, of those who tried to escape but never made it past the garden walls. Her fear clung to her, heavy and suffocating. She couldn't let Harriet be one of them, not her. Sethron's shadowy figure slipped through the alley like smoke, moving too fast for Seraphim to keep up. She set herself into a full sprint, her legs burning as she forced herself forward, her chest tight with desperation. The walls of the alley seemed to close in around her, and every echo of her footsteps felt like a reminder that she was too far behind. I have to catch her. I have to stop this. At the end of the alley, A stall selling scarves and banners flapped softly in the evening breeze, colors swirling in the fading light. Seraphim's mind barely registered it as she rounded the corner, pushing herself harder than she had in years. And then she collided with something solid, a wall of muscle and strength that knocked the breath